Hi, everybody. Welcome to Active Self-Protection Extra. Today, I want to talk about a very interesting article that I read in Slate about a New Jerseyan applying for his permit to own a gun. And the particular bent on this one was a little interesting. It might make you a little uncomfortable, but to me, it points to an incredible reason why I hate May issue regimes. Whether you choose the new home defense model with an impressive 20-foot range, or the standard smaller discreet model, or the mid-size Mark III, Palm Pepper Spray is who I trust to give me something between a harsh word and a gun. Being able to bless someone with the hot sauce and break contact is an important tool in every self-defender's toolbox, so go hit the link in the description and pick some up. Thank them for sponsoring today's video. So let's be clear, Slate is no fan of gun rights, okay? But I want to point out this article. The link is in the description on Slate's website, and it was written by a man named Ayman Ismail, who is an American Muslim who grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and still lives in the state of New Jersey. And of course, there is a gun culture in New Jersey. I got several friends, folks in the gun industry who are New Jerseyans fighting for the rights of New Jerseyans there. But this particular one was interesting, and I'd really recommend you read the article. I think it's a very valuable article, and it really makes you think, okay? Just the very beginning of it, I thought it was well written. I thought it was really thoughtful. It says, I don't think I actually wanted a gun. I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, where this was the saying: people with knives get stabbed, people with guns get shot. The conventional wisdom was that it was safer to be unarmed. If someone mugged you, just give them what you've got. That doesn't always work, we know that, but that was his thoughts. But things changed as I got older. I'm Arab, Muslim. Like many Muslim families after 9/11, I internalized the idea that being inviting and performatively friendly was more essential for survival than anything else. Now, you go down a little bit further. Before, I never thought of myself as someone who could be a gun guy. True, I didn't really think a gun would make me or my family safer. But as I wrote about gun culture for Slate and thought about my own relationships with guns, I became curious to own one of my own. So this is what he did in 2020. He applied for a New Jersey firearm purchaser identification, a permit to purchase a firearm that is required in New Jersey. And so he got his permit, though, if you go read the article, was withdrawn. So the cop, that gets sent to an officer in New Jersey who has discretion. That officer can decide whether or not to allow that to happen. Now, of course, this was 2020. This is before Bruen. And so this is that May issue kind of statute. And he said, no, I'm going to withdraw it because you had a trespassing charge, went back many years ago. And so that trespassing charge, when he was a street photographer, so he's a street photographer in New York City, got trespassed off a place and got a trespassing charge. But that, under New Jersey law, shouldn't have prohibited him from owning a firearm in New Jersey. But the cop said, well, I'm going to withdraw this because it'll get denied otherwise. And then if you get your record expunged, you can't ever reapply. So I'm going to withdraw this as a courtesy to you so that you can't buy a gun. Now, that's a little crazy because, of course, once you have that, doesn't mean you can carry. Then you have to have a carry permit there, and that's May issue as well. But it was interesting. He talks about a whole bunch about how long it takes for some people to get their firearms purchaser identification. That for some friends, it was 2 weeks, and for others, it was 6 months. Now, what was the difference? Well, and frankly, it was their race. There was a stunning correlation that they found here, and they've got some of that in their Google Drive. There's some really interesting stuff there. There's links that are in the article. You can go there. They look at the data, and this is what they found. We actually had to take all the numbers from the dashboard, create their own dashboard to get to what are the denial rates by race. And they said that in one county, in Ocean County, New Jersey, he said a black person is about 50 times more likely to be denied a permit to carry versus a white person. And statewide, the disparity was roughly 10-1. Now, if you look at that compared to like marijuana enforcement, that we're talking about numbers that are 10 times more likely. So these weren't people who were legitimately disqualified either. We're not talking about people who are committing criminal acts. Law-abiding citizens, clean criminal record, never convicted of a crime, applies for a firearm ID card. They get approved for it. Then when they apply for a carry permit with the exact same qualifications, they're getting denied if they're black and approved if they're white, because it's up to the police officer's discretion. And your constitutional rights depend upon your zip code in New Jersey. That, to me, is an incredibly important part of this article. And I think that it's really incredibly important for us to see this. And I know that, okay, a lot of the viewers of active self-protection tend to skew conservative and they get real squirrely about racial stuff. But this is the kind of stuff that I look at and I say, look, man, if you look at the history of gun control in America, going back to Jim Crow laws, for God's sake, it's about disarming minorities and about keeping black people from having guns and from being in the same standard as the whites, You go back to the Mulford Act in California, for goodness sakes. It's Black Panthers with guns that scared the crap out of everybody because they're black. So, wait a minute, we got to have some gun control here. So when we see stuff like this, to me, and again, I'd really recommend that you go read the article and let's talk about it in the comments and do so respectfully, that this guy, because he's Arab, because he's Muslim, he, and again, in his name looks Arab. And so wait a minute. And then when he chooses race, he didn't choose white. And because of that, those things down, I can't say because of that, but he gets denied when he had no disqualifying factors because the officer had discretion who to approve and who not to approve. And that to me shows why May issue is such an absolute trash idea and why I'm glad that under Bruen, those have been swept away. Now, again, this is a modern article just posted the other day. So, again, links in the description. She talks in here about a pending federal case involving a Muslim attorney out of New Jersey who said his application was denied after officials cited some pro-Palestinian political posts online that they flagged as threatening or terrorism related. Now, again, you got to be really careful with that because then you go, wait a minute, if I'm exercising my First Amendment rights, then that prohibits me from exercising my Second Amendment rights. I don't think the court's gonna take that very well. And I don't think they should take that very well. And it's funny, my friend John Petrolino got quoted in this article. So, they at least went and talked to him. It's an opinion-based thing, and that just gets abused and abused and abused. And an interesting factor that I saw is that more than 20 municipalities, this is in the article, across New Jersey have passed resolutions reimbursing firearms permitting fees on the grounds that high costs attached to a constitutional right function as a discriminatory barrier, particularly in working class communities. Absolutely. This is one of the reasons I'm so for constitutional carry, is that basically what you're doing is you are denying the right to bear arms, which is a constitutionally protected right, to poor people because they can't afford the permitting process. And that's just blatantly unconstitutional. It is discriminating against someone because of their economic status, in my opinion. And you guys know me. And again, at Active Self-Protection, we have one political position, and that is the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The people, all of the people, the right that is denied some of the people is denied all of the people. And so again, you cannot deny somebody that right or discriminate against them based on their religion, based on their gender, based on their ethnicity, none of that stuff. Okay. You cannot do that. And so here's the thing, these shall issue or, may issue regimes when anybody has any kind of discretion as to, well, if you just feel like they give you the heebie-jeebies, you can say no. This is why I'm so grateful for New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruen that says these schemes are absolutely unconstitutional and have no place. Now, the lower courts are fighting that, right? And they're still bucking this idea, and the Supreme Court has to come back and beat them over the head. I think it's going to take another decade or so for the Supreme Court to keep beating them over the head, the appeals courts and the state courts that are ignoring Bruen. Nope, bang, go back to Bruen. Nope, bang, go back to Bruen. And they're doing that consistently with them, okay? And you see some stuff in this article about doing better with that. And the interesting thing here is that at the end of the article, it says, maybe gun ownership will remain something symbolic for me. So 6 years after applying, so this is now all the way fast forward to 2026, and he finally, after 6 years, got his firearms owner identification so he can buy a gun. But he's not sure if he's going to, right? Maybe gun ownership will remain something symbolic for me, and I'll keep putting off actually buying one. For now, having the permit feels like enough. I waited 6 years for the state to decide if I was allowed to be the type of person who owns guns. And then he says at the end, I can wait a little longer before deciding whether I am. Why does the state have that right to decide whether or not he does? Where else, for God's sake, would we allow the state to say, well, as long as the state does issue those permits, well, then the state can issue those permits to decide who gets to exercise a constitutional right. Could you imagine doing this with the right to free worship? Well, listen, we're not saying people can't worship how they want. We just want the state to license them so we know they're safe in their worship and that they're not a dangerous version of a worshiper. We would quite correctly just absolutely lose our minds. We would go bonkers over that idea, and rightly so. We want to make sure that before somebody posts their opinion online or takes a video and posts it to a social media, that the state has the right to decide who can do that and make sure that they're safe, so that they're not a criminal and they haven't done bad things in the past before they exercise the right to free speech. That would be insane. And yet we allow that crap with the Second Amendment. And that to me is just mind-boggling, why the state would ever have that level of control over somebody. No, absolutely not. I like his last sentence. I can wait a little longer before deciding whether I am. I totally honor that. If you don't want to own a gun, I think that's totally fine. I think some people shouldn't own guns, but they have the right to own guns, and they should make that decision for themselves. It's not the state making that decision for them. And this is why I'm all for constitutional carry. That's why I am 100% for, this idea of you can take someone's rights away via due process, right? So if they did something that is disqualifying, you can say you no longer have that right. You've got a felony, violent felony on your record. Therefore, you're no longer allowed to own firearms. But if you get caught with a firearm, then you're going to go to jail for a long time because you're a prohibited possessor. I'm okay with that because their behavior, past behavior, is the number one predictor of future behavior. But until then, hey man, you have rights, and therefore your rights are rights. And I hate this, man. I think that we all, no matter what, and I say that as I am a 50-year-old white guy. I am like a English peasant mutt combined with Scandinavian, okay? And some Anglo-Saxon in there. So that's my ethnic background, is like Northern European mutt. And I am a 50-year-old guy. I am heterosexual. I am a follower of Jesus. So I'm kind of that demographic that would be the dude that's like, no, this is all about me. But for me, it's all about all of us, right? It's all about every person, and especially people who aren't like me. That's the heart of the Second Amendment, is the right of all of us to keep and bear arms as a bulwark against government tyranny. All of us. And so I hate everything about what this man went through. And again, as a Christian, I don't mind that he's a Muslim. I think we have religious disagreements, and I would encourage him to rethink, because I think Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. But I honor his right to worship how he wants to. That's our rights as Americans, to freely worship in any way that we choose. And so I honor his right to worship in that way. And just like with militant Christians who would seek to harm others, then I would say that violates that right to free worship. When it's going to harm somebody else, then nope, you don't have that right anymore, because now you violated the non-aggression principle. Same thing with my Muslim brothers and sisters. I know plenty of them that are wonderful, peaceful people, got no problems at all. Once you start advocating and particularly pushing people towards violence, now I got a problem. Okay. And it's a problem with the pushing people towards violence, not a problem with the religion, right? You baptize it in whatever you want, whatever ideology your heart desires, and I ain't for it, okay? But you put Bible verses or Quran verses behind it, and it's both wrong, all right? So I just think, go and read the article, and then let's have a competent discussion here. I really hate firearms owner identification, because that says the right to keep arms is regulated by the government, which is against the heart of the Second Amendment. And then I even don't like concealed carry permits. This is why I love living in Arizona. We're the first modern state to go constitutional carry in 2010. Because again, you have a right to bear arms too. And I think we should continue to push more and more states. We're now over half the states as constitutional carry. And I think that we should be at 100%. What about you?